Alright guys, I hate to say it, but right now in the story of My Hero Academia, Bakugo Katsuki is absolutely falling behind. I mean, he certainly had a great run, but it is slowly but surely coming to an end. Now, this is actually something that I've been wanting to talk to you guys about for quite some time, actually over 3 months now, as we got terminated and whatever, it got pushed back until now. And honestly, this belief of mine has only been further corroborated by the current events of the story. And on that note, we will be delving a bit into manga spoiler territory, and so if you're an anime only and don't want to know how the series continues to get better and better, I highly suggest you save yourself right now. And with that out of the way, let us begin. Now, what exactly do I mean by Bakugo is falling behind? Because certainly he isn't falling or lagging behind when it comes to the entirety of Class 1A. That's not the case. It's certainly not the case for Class B either. However, when it comes to Deku, our main character, Izuku Midoriya is speeding up and he is on the precipice of passing up Bakugo if he hasn't already. Now, if you're wondering about him in contention with Shoto, we actually have a video discussing just that, Bakugo versus Shoto, a rematch of sorts. KJ and I had a really good debate on the subject, and I highly recommend you check out that video. But yeah, it's looking like Midoriya is going to be passing up Bakugo. And so why is this a big deal? He's the main character, it's one character, who cares? Well, virtually the entirety of Bakugo's persona and character is built upon the foundation that he is the best, he is the greatest. And so for a character that is always threatening others with his superiority, talking about pounding them into the ground, it kind of loses its weight if we know that Midoriya is above him and past him. Sure, it's a bit of a comedic bit already right now, but it really would not be taken seriously at all if this were to become the case. Now, when we first talked about chapter 283 of the manga, we discussed how Bakugo is quite visibly getting left behind here as Deku charges onwards during this fight against Shigaraki, as Bakugo is just sitting on his ass dumbfounded. But even still, this current dichotomy is not entirely new. This isn't just the first occurrence of this. Now, of course, since the very beginning of the series, these two characters have been rivals and against each other in their pursuits of greatness. But personally, I'd have to attribute the beginning of this sort of paradigm shift to their shared work study under the #1 hero, Endeavor. What these two characters sought from their tutelage were two entirely different things. On one hand, you have Deku, who wanted to better control his quirk, being capable of maintaining maximum power outage along with unrestricted movements. Bakugo, on the other hand, wanted to find his limitations, discover what he can't do. And despite how pompous it may have initially came across as, this was actually a very humble statement and sentiment to receive from this character. Whereas everyone else has kind of been growing in the powers and capabilities department, Bakugo's development has been more so rooted in his own maturity. He now understands that despite how incredible his quirk may be, it is not enough to have him become #1 or even surpass #1. And I really and truly love this for him. However, whereas we got to see the fruits of Deku's labor, the development of his powers and such, we did not receive that for Bakugo. We never got a clear picture of what his limitations really were. And so whereas Deku has been able to go beyond and do more plus ultra and all that, Bakugo has been in the same place. He's been in the same place for I don't know how long. And really and truly, this is just a story of natural talent versus hard work. Bakugo was blessed with an incredible quirk and became complacent. Deku, even when he was quirkless, aspired to become a professional hero and go to UA. Bakugo's quirk is incredibly powerful and versatile. I mean, it can do so many things. Even when Deku was said to be able to possess float one day, Bakugo wasn't fazed because he could still do that sort of thing with his quirk, so it wasn't that big of a difference. But whereas Bakugo has plateaued, Deku is soaring. He is just continually getting stronger and stronger, and the rise is far more prominent, not only because he is the main character, but because he came from nothing. Bakugo and his whole situation is certainly reminiscent of other popular rival characters such as Vegeta or Sasuke. However, when it comes to both of these examples, when faced with the prospect of inferiority to their rivals, they turn to darker methods of gaining power. But I don't think that this will ever be the case with Bakugo. And I say that because I feel as though Horikoshi has made it expressly clear that he is not going to do that with this character. I mean, Bakugo is certainly a jerk and has been a jerk since the beginning of the series, but when he was captured by Shigaraki and presented with the potential to join the dark side, he abstained. He said absolutely not, because at the end of the day, his dream is to be the #1 hero. And so that is a line that Horikoshi refuses to cross, at least as far as I've been able to tell. It is something that he absolutely has to abstain from. Otherwise, what the hell is the point? Now, certainly one could argue that Endeavor sort of blurs that line between hero and villain, as he was villainous towards his family and such, but was a hero to the general populace, saving people and all that, resolving the most cases. And so maybe that sort of future could be expected of Bakugo, as Endeavor did seem to allude to such a thing, as he kind of maybe saw a bit of himself when talking to Bakugo and hearing his ideals and his intentions behind the lessons. But even then, I feel like Bakugo is certainly lacking in the experience department. Honestly, think about it. While Bakugo was with Best Jeanist, working on his anger issues and getting a new haircut, Deku was off with Gran Torino, figuring out the shoot style and taking down the hero killer. Then, while Bakugo is at Jeanist agency without Jeanist even being there, Deku is off with Sernai and arguably the strongest student at UA, fighting against Overhaul, who had the potential to flip all of society on its head with the quirk-destroying drug. And once again, even when these two share a hero study, they're studying under the same professional. Deku is the one who walks away with a huge power-up, while Bakugo is just over here twiddling his thumbs. And it's honestly really sad, man. Like, I would love for us to have a dedicated Bakugo arc, but I don't see that happening anytime soon, especially with the current events of the story being as crazy as they are right now. At this point, Bakugo is consistently ranked #1 in the character popularity polls. But honestly, at this point in the story, we don't exactly have much to go off of. Now, as I'm sure you can imagine with the whole premise of the series, Horikoshi is a huge fan of Western superhero comics. So much so that at this point you can quite clearly see the inspiration and influence that the 3 most popular comic book superhero characters have had on the creation of his main character Deku: Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man. Firstly, we can attribute Batman's influence to the ways in which Deku so thoroughly analyzes various situations and/or circumstances, as well as the extent to which he studied the quirks and practices of various professional heroes and students alike. The way in which he's expected to take up the mantle from All Might, like a Robin would be expected to in the absence of Batman himself, and also his situation with Hatsume as his support items arms dealer, providing him with gadgets to further augment his capabilities. The Superman comparisons are far less nuanced, however, as that's pretty much what All Might was. He punches really, really hard, and if you've been with the channel for a while now, then you'd know that we tend to call him things like Baby Superman. The fact that Black Whip now provides him with super strength that can lift several tons of weight without strain, and that he now possesses the quirk of Shimmeranana, Float, only furthers this. And lastly, the whole Spider-Man thing is very much rooted in his Black Whip quirk. When it first appeared, it was unruly and uncontrollable like the symbiote, and he can latch onto buildings with it and grapple people and objects at a distance. And I guess you could attribute the flashes of lightning around him to be like the Flash or whatever. Now, the reason I bring this up at all is to question where Bakugo's influences may stem from, if at all. I mean, he is up against an amalgam of the greatest superheroes in all of fiction. Meanwhile, the only thing I could even reasonably attribute him to would be Wolverine or something like that. I don't know, maybe you guys can think of something that I haven't. In their first fight, Bakugo's power was overwhelming as Deku could barely use his own. But even still, Deku read Bakugo like a book and capitalized on that. In the end, no amount of cleverness could make up for the sea of difference between their capabilities, especially when Bakugo switched it up. But the seeds were planted. In their second fight, things were far closer, like extremely close. They were practically even matched. But ultimately, Bakugo emerged victorious. Now tell me, what do you imagine a third fight between these two would look like at this point? At a passive 30 to 45% power outage of One for All from Deku, Bakugo has to now make a conscious effort to keep up and go beyond. On top of that, Deku currently has 2 additional quirks, Black Whip and Float. Float, he's only just awakened, so we don't know the extent to which he's able to really control it. It seems to be far more straightforward than Black Whip, but we'll still have to wait and see. However, Black Whip, although he may not be at the precipice of its power, capabilities and such, he has shown that he is able to really do some incredible things with it thus far. Whereas Bakugo, on the other hand, hasn't exactly improved dramatically or remarkably since the forest training arc. Feels bad, man, it really does. And on that note, I'd love to know how you guys feel about all this in the comments section. Where do you think Bakugo goes from here, and how do you imagine the relationship of these two characters will shift when the current situation is made even clearer? And if you'd like to further the conversation, you can go ahead and follow me at Slice of Otaku on my various socials. And be sure to subscribe to the channel, because when it comes to bringing you some of the best My Hero Academia content on the platform, Plot Armor has you covered. As always, I am Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.